At the beginning of the story, we see a dragon emerging from the clouds right in front of Moroha. He remembers girls who died right before his eyes, and he decides he will never let something like that happen again. So, he attacks the dragon using his sword and magical powers. Several knights, calling themselves saviors, join him as he writes magical spells in the sky. Together, they manage to restrain the dragon for a short while. But when the dragon breaks through the knight's powers and stands before Moroha once again, he casts his highest level spell to defeat it, causing an immense explosion. 6 months before this battle, Moroha was sitting alongside his classmates at the Arcane Academy of Sword and Magic. He was one of the special students capable of awakening memories from past lives and using superhuman powers inherited from their ancestors. As the headmistress began her speech promoting courses meant to unlock even more ancestral memories, Moroha fell asleep and started having strange dreams about a girl with pink hair in a setting filled with war and destruction. In the dream, he saved her, and she embraced him tightly. When he woke up, he saw her standing at a distance in front of him, and for a moment, he thought she might come closer and kiss him, just like in his dream. However, she slapped him on the head and called him lazy for falling asleep on the very first day of class. Looking at her, Moroha felt she looked just like the girl from his dream, whose name had been Sarah. She also thought he resembled a knight named Flaga. When Moroha called her by that name, she was shocked, jumped into his arms, and called him her brother. Her name was Satsuki now, but she had once been Sarah in her past life. He tried to explain that he wasn't the person she thought he was, and that he didn't remember anything from any previous life. He claimed that the name Sarah had just popped into his mind without any real reason. Upon hearing that, she considered trying to kill him, to see if that would somehow trigger his memories. But suddenly, a girl collapsed on the floor. Moroha rushed over to check on her, and she suddenly stole a kiss from him. Satsuki became furious and started complaining, saying that Moroha had his little sister, and even so, he still chose some random girl instead. Moroha didn't understand any of it, because to him, it made no sense that he couldn't be with another girl just because he had a sister. And Satsuki, embarrassed for making assumptions that went against the laws of humanity, ran away in shame. Later on, inside the classroom, Satsuki tried to pretend she was a smart and influential person in order to gain more friends. But all she managed to do was embarrass herself in front of everyone. However, Moroha saved her by standing up and telling everyone that he had an accident and soiled himself. The atmosphere completely changed after that, and Satsuki smiled at him, feeling grateful for his help. The teacher then called Shizuno, but she was sleeping at her desk. After class, Satsuki went to the locker room and promised herself she would impress everyone with her skills, especially her brother, who would receive a special reward from her. Now she was feeling truly happy, because the love between the two of them was no longer considered taboo, since they were no longer siblings by blood. When she saw him in the hallway, she ran over to him and invited him to go out with her after class. But he tried to dodge the invitation, saying that he was looking for a job. She quickly pointed out that the academy rules prohibited students from taking part-time jobs. Suddenly, they crossed through a kind of invisible barrier, and when Satsuki asked what that was, Shizuno approached them and explained that they had just entered a separate dimension, where no injury or wound would affect them after they returned. They then joined the rest of the classmates at the training grounds, where the teacher explained that there were 2 types of powers: the strength-based ones, which involved weapons and swords, and the intelligence-based ones, which made use of magic. After that, he said he would teach them the basics of using their powers, and activated an ability that formed an aura of light around his body, while also automatically changing his outfit. Some of the students were fascinated by it and wanted to try it themselves. So, the teacher explained that the aura around his body was called plana, and that each of them would need to figure out how to manifest their own plana. Everyone began trying different physical movements, and some even ended up having accidents from trying too hard. That's when Satsuki stepped forward in front of everyone and easily activated her plana. She was able to lift one of her classmates with just one hand, and she blushed at the impressed looks surrounding her from all sides. Meanwhile, Moroha was still hesitant to activate his plana, and Satsuki walked up to him to encourage him. At that moment, they heard a student named Jen complaining about the class, saying it was pointless and a waste of time. Satsuki went over to him and called him scum. and also said that he looked like a filthy loser. Jen became furious, stood in front of her, and began mocking her beliefs, accusing her of acting like some kind of justice defender. She didn't back down and kept provoking him. To everyone's surprise, Jen activated his plana, and his aura shone brightly, revealing an impressive level of power. He then suggested a training match, and Satsuki accepted the challenge. The teacher allowed it and decided to personally supervise and judge the fight. The two of them took their places on the battlefield. Jen quickly summoned his favorite weapon to fight, and Satsuki, in turn, summoned her sword through the pendant she wore. From the sidelines, Moroha watched the fight from the stands along with Shizuno and the other students. Shizuno explained to Moroha that if he channeled his plana into his pendant, the item would transform into a weapon he had once used in his past life. When the fight began, the two exchanged a series of powerful blows. Satsuki managed to land a strong hit, but to her surprise, Jen disarmed her with a swift movement, making her sword fly out of her hands. He looked at her triumphantly and, with arrogance, ordered her to pick up her weapon to continue. Satsuki was furious and promised to make him apologize by the end of the match. However, Jen surprised her with a strike from behind, tearing part of her uniform and exposing her in front of everyone. Embarrassed, Satsuki froze, unable to react. Moroha quickly ran over and covered her with his coat. Meanwhile, Jen continued laughing and mocking both of them, calling them weak. Satsuki, unable to hold back her tears, ran off, while Moroha stared at Jen with resentment and decided to go after her. After class, Moroha and Satsuki went to a cafe. He tried to cheer her up, but she remained discouraged. To encourage her, he said that she didn't have to be the best, as long as her intentions to protect people were sincere. Satsuki then began to talk about her past, explaining that her hometown was constantly attacked by creatures known as metaphysicals, forcing her to relocate many times. This made it hard for her to make friends, but she never felt lonely, because she still had her memories as Sarah, and saw Flaga in her dreams every night. She revealed that she had joined the Hero Academy, in the hope of one day reuniting with her brother Flaga, whom she firmly believed was Moroha. All she truly wanted was to impress him and receive his praise. Overwhelmed by emotion, Satsuki began to cry as she remembered her defeat to Jen, feeling pathetic and humiliated. Just then, Shizuno appeared and joined them. Seeing them together, she looked surprised and annoyed. She asked Moroha if he had invited Satsuki out, but he denied it. Moroha asked Shizuno to leave them alone, saying she wasn't part of the conversation. However, Shizuno stepped closer and said she couldn't just walk away. Satsuki, annoyed by her presence, tried to push her away, but was unsuccessful. Then Satsuki accused Shizuno of using her body to seduce Moroha. Shizuno replied with sarcasm, saying that Satsuki was just jealous because her underdeveloped body had nothing to offer. In response, Satsuki declared that she was still growing, then pulled Moroha and shoved his head between her non-existent charms. He tried to break free, but in the middle of the commotion, Moroha, now in pain, ended up calling Satsuki all bones, because she was hurting him by pressing his face against her bony frame. Offended, she ran away, leaving the two of them behind. After Satsuki's departure, Moroha thanked Shizuno for helping to lift Satsuki's spirits, even if only a little. He then asked her why she was helping them. However, Shizuno left without giving a clear answer. Later, Moroha invited Jen to the training field and demanded that he apologize to Satsuki. Jen agreed, but on one condition: Moroha would have to land at least one hit on him. Without wasting time, Jen removed his coat and grabbed his necklace to summon his axe. And without any warning, he launched an attack on Moroha, who barely had time to prepare himself. Meanwhile, Satsuki was in her room when Shizuno appeared, informing her that Moroha was in trouble against General. Upon hearing that, Satsuki ran toward the training field. At the same time, Jen continued mocking Moroha, saying he had been thrown aside with just a simple, light blow. Moroha felt that he was in real danger, unable to keep up with Jen's quick movements. He was also caught off guard when Jen suddenly appeared behind him, trying to strike him with a powerful blow. However, Moroha managed to block it in time using his weapon. Enraged, Moroha tried to counterattack with his sword, but he was shocked to see his blade shatter. When Jen struck it with his axe, every time Moroha tried to resist, Jen pushed him back. And when Moroha's weapon slipped from his hands and he tried to recover it, Jen stepped on his hand and asked how long he intended to keep struggling. At that moment, Satsuki began shouting, saying that he was the strongest knight and would never lose a battle like that. Satsuki promised to give him a special and very tight reward if he won the fight. And at that very moment, that tight reward was a great incentive. But it also reminded him of the promise he had made to her in the past, that he would always win his battles, no matter how many enemies he faced, and that he would return to her. So, when Jin tried to deliver the final blow, Moroha suddenly remembered everything about his past, summoned his weapon, and charged at him to attack. Jin was shocked by Moroha's incredible speed, which was now equal to his own, and he tried to block the strike. But everyone was surprised to see Jin lose consciousness and remain motionless. Satsuki ran to Moroha, who collapsed unconscious into her arms. Moroha had a dream about his past, promising his sister that he would defeat every enemy and return victorious to her. Then, Satsuki came closer and kissed him. But when he regained consciousness, he realized it was actually another blonde girl kissing him. When I saw that scene, I called the FBI and asked them to investigate the creator of this anime. But unfortunately, the FBI didn't respond. The girl walked over to Headmistress Mary, who told her that the young girl had transferred some of her magic through her lips to help restore the mana Moroha had lost. Next, Moroha noticed that Headmistress Mary had already tied up Satsuki because she wanted to sleep on top of him without wearing any clothes. But the academy is a place for training heroes, not for girls to have children. After saying that, she sat beside Moroha and asked him if he was the ancient dragon, explaining that some saviors may have 2 past lives instead of just 1. He replied that he could barely remember his past life as a warrior. Then, Headmistress Mary mentioned that she had been watching his battle against Jin, and that when he delivered the final blow, he had used the 3rd step of dark magic. She told him to rest for a while and explained that his body wasn't injured because he had fought in their special arena. The headmistress then left the room, leaving Satsuki still tied up on the floor with ropes. When Moroha untied her, she ran up to him and tried to kiss him, asking if he remembered everything. He replied that he remembered a little about his past life, but not everything. Shizuno then joined them and kissed Moroha, just to provoke Satsuki, while the small girl observed everything from behind the wall. Moroha and Satsuki exchanged phone numbers, and Satsuki became emotional, because it was the very first number he had saved in his phone. After his parents' contact information, Shizuno realized that Satsuki was feeling lonely and without friends, so she suggested that they exchange phone numbers as well. Moroha and Shizuno were both surprised when one of their classmates entered the classroom and asked the two of them to follow him. In a private location, he informed them that Headmistress Mary had promoted them to rank C, and Moroha noticed that this guy was Jin's older brother, whose name was Jin. Moroha also realized that this new ranking might come with some drawbacks, and Jin explained that he would now have to join and become a member of the Attacker Squad, a combat group that fights against metaphysical monsters once or twice a month. Those who take part in this Attacker Squad receive a generous monthly payment, and when Jin whispered the amount to him, Moroha became incredibly excited and agreed to join the team immediately. Meanwhile, Satsuki was eavesdropping on them from behind the door. She barged in and asked Jin to include her in the same team as Moroha and Shizuno. Jin was surprised by her sudden appearance and said he didn't know anything about her abilities to consider including her in his team. Shizuno then mocked Satsuki, saying that her skills were only good enough to suffer a humiliating defeat at the hands of Jin's ugly little brother. After hearing that, Jin said it was still far too soon for Satsuki to join them, even as a reserve member. After being rejected, he simply walked away. However, she intended to use that sadness as motivation to become stronger. After school, Jin and his squad met with Shizuno and Moroha to officially welcome them. Then, the squad members stood at attention before Jin to recite the group's anthem. Shizuno felt nervous, realizing she would also have to memorize their motto. Shizuno and Moroha watched from the stands, and she explained to him that Jin's generation was known as the Golden Generation because they had defeated more metaphysicals than any other group in Japan. They were considered the strongest team in the entire White Knight Agency, and most of them had already passed rank B. After hearing that, Moroha started wondering if he could ever become someone that important. After training, Moroha was completely exhausted from being beaten by Jin. He felt he hadn't been this tired since the day he was born. Shizuno commented that by now it was already too late to back down and run away from the hits. As they were leaving, they found Satsuki waiting for Moroha. She said she had found a great place to eat and invited him to come with her. But Shizuno interrupted, saying that both she and Moroha were too tired and needed rest in order to handle the daily training. Satsuki became embarrassed, apologized for not realizing the importance of that, and asked if she could invite them again on the weekend. Shizuno showed no excitement about accepting her invitation, but still gave Satsuki permission to invite them. After getting their permission, Satsuki quickly walked away, without continuing the conversation. Moroha then commented that he didn't like the way Shizuno acted so tough, and gave the harsh replies to Satsuki on his behalf. He said she didn't have to carry the burden of delivering all the cold answers alone, and asked her to trust him more, to also say things that would make people smile, rather than leave them hurt. Meanwhile, Satsuki was crying on her way back, feeling that Shizuno was closer to her brother because she was stronger than her. Suddenly, she received a phone call from Moroha, who asked why she was crying, trying to hide it. She said she was allergic to phone calls, but was shocked when he revealed he could see the tears running down her face, because he was walking right behind her. He approached and invited her to have lunch with him during vacation to cheer her up. Moroha felt a little embarrassed when Satsuki asked him to talk to her on the phone before bed, and jokingly said he'd call her 3 times a week. A few days later, Satsuki called Shizuno, woke her up, and asked her to come with her somewhere. When they met up, Shizuno asked what the invitation was about, and Satsuki explained that she wanted to buy a gift for Moroha to celebrate his promotion. She chose Shizuno to help her split the cost of the gift. Shizuno walked through stores and markets with Satsuki, without showing much interest, while Satsuki tried to find a suitable present. After a while, she began feeling frustrated for not having chosen anything yet. So, Shizuno asked her to bring a banana ice cream, since she was feeling exhausted. When Satsuki picked up the ice creams, she saw 2 children eating together, and remembered when she used to do the same with Moroha during their childhood. Suddenly, she noticed the sky had become covered with thick, dark clouds. The ground beneath her feet began to collapse, and a massive serpent-like monster emerged from the water fountain. Chaos took over the area, with people running in panic in every direction. Satsuki, stunned, was frozen in place in front of the monster. But then, she noticed a child crying on the ground, very close to the creature. She was afraid and couldn't move, but upon thinking that she wouldn't deserve to be Moroha's sister if she ran away, she found the strength to fight. She used her necklace to summon her sword, and confronted the monster. She also asked Shizuno to help evacuate the civilians, all while she attacked the creature, landing a deep slash. Then, she began writing out her magic spell, and used the ice element to try freezing it. Shizuno informed her that she had already contacted Moroha and the academy. Satsuki then told her to secure the area, while she tried to buy them some time. However, Shizuno interrupted her, saying that she was the revered witch of the underworld, and that she would support Satsuki in the battle against the monster. Together, the two began launching attacks using multiple abilities. They ran inside a shopping mall, and inside they discovered something terrible. The creature that looked like a giant snake was actually a monster with multiple heads. In a moment when Satsuki was about to be struck by a magical attack, Shizuno defended her thanks to her superior magical resistance. But after being hit, Satsuki noticed that Shizuno's body was beginning to harden. At the same time, Moroha went to his squad's headquarters, and told Jin that a 9-headed monster had attacked a large shopping center. To his surprise, Jin refused to send any reinforcements, stating that the creature was far beyond their capabilities, and that it would require an army of at least 100 people to defeat it. Moroha felt powerless, and in that moment, he remembered when he wanted to tell his parents that he wished to donate blood to them, but his proposal was rejected by the doctor, because at the time he was still too young. After recalling that, Moroha became furious, and refused to obey the orders. He told everyone that if they couldn't save 2 girls, they didn't deserve to be called the Swords of Salvation. Meanwhile, Satsuki was trying to wake Shizuno after she fainted. The monster approached and started wrapping its tongue around her, trying to restrain her in order to savor the taste of her bones more fully. She felt that this might be her end, and once again, she would fail to make her brother proud. But in the final moment, Satsuki was saved just in time by Moroha, who summoned his weapon. He then began attacking the monster's heads, striking repeatedly, until he heard Shizuno say that he needed to remember a different power in order to defeat this creature. She encouraged him to believe that he could do it, and at that moment, Moroha recalled certain memories from his past life as a witch devourer. He recited magical spells and summoned the fire element, combining it with his sword to form a powerful force. Right after that, he charged at the monster's heads, and with one decisive blow, he managed to defeat it, saving his friends. After the incident, Jin decided to include Satsuki in the team as a reserve member, acknowledging her courage in facing the monster, despite the difference in power level. Before leaving, he told Moroha that his decision to face the monster had been the right one, because he possessed the strength needed to do so. Moroha didn't seem to fully understand the meaning behind Jin's words, and at the same time, Satsuki was overjoyed to be part of the team, and to stay close to Moroha. A few days later, Shizuno fell asleep while she was at a cafe with Moroha and Satsuki. Suddenly, a mysterious man entered, dancing for no reason, sat at the table next to theirs, and the waitress was surprised to notice that he only spoke English. When Satsuki approached to help the waitress by speaking English to him, she discovered that he actually spoke fluent Japanese, and began to complain, saying that he should have spoken Japanese from the start. He explained that he couldn't read the menu, and requested a specific drink, detailing how it should be prepared. Satsuki became annoyed and suggested that he go to Starbucks if he wanted a special drink. Shizuno realized he was British, and said that Japanese coffee and tea might not suit his tastes. Satsuki asked the cafe manager to prepare a special beverage. The manager made the best drink in the house, but when the man learned it contained milk, he immediately spat it out in disgust. When Moroha went to speak with the waitress, he was shocked to realize that time had stopped, and that the mysterious man already knew his name, and was moving rapidly from place to place. The man nearly struck him, but then stopped and returned everything to normal, displaying a confident smile. He then put on his glasses and left the cafe after paying for the drink he had spat out. Shizuno explained that he was Edward Lampert, one of the 6 heads of state of the world's most powerful country, and that he had just used a secret technique from Gensukayo. She deduced that he was after Moroha, and commented to Satsuki that many other nations were interested in him as well. Satsuki felt proud that her brother was the center of attention due to his strength, and criticized Edward's behavior for provoking Moroha, stating that he would soon reach his rank. But Shizuno explained that those who attain the highest level have very little freedom, require permission to go outside, and are obligated to fight in any situation against large groups of monsters. Satsuki became frustrated upon realizing that she wouldn't be able to date Moroha if he reached his rank. Satsuki asked Shizuno why she was even in the academy, since she didn't seem to care about anything related to the work of saviors. Shizuno explained that she awakened her memories as a savior earlier than most people, and that her family was made up of important individuals in the world of saviors, who expected great accomplishments from her. Even if she chose to do nothing and wanted nothing, they would still do everything in their power to exploit her abilities for their own benefit. After that, when they arrived in the courtyard, the teacher announced that today's class would be joint training between first and second year students. He asked a second-year student to explain the exercise to the newcomers. A blonde student named Kami volunteered. Then, the teacher requested that Moroha participate in a practice match, since he and Kami were considered the strongest newcomers. Satsuki was surprised to learn that Kami was a member of the Hitman Squad, a team similar to the attackers group that she, Moroha, and Shizuno belonged to. Shizuno's older brother watched from the stands alongside Edward, who was distracted, playing a video game and showing no interest in the match. Kami then activated her plana, summoned her weapon, and unleashed her level 2 flames at Moroha. But to everyone's surprise, Moroha blocked her attack using an anti-magic ability. Realizing that Moroha was about to use a level 3 spell, Kami bowed down, apologized, and begged him not to strike her with his powers. However, Moroha was unmoved and launched a powerful fire attack, causing an explosion that was heard even outside the academy. After the training session, Moroha went to Headmistress Mary's office, but was instead greeted by her sister, Maya. She said she could tell him anything he wanted to know, and began talking about Shizuno's family. She explained that the president wanted to turn his sister into a savior, to become superior to others, and that before she entered the academy, she had been trained in black magic. Meanwhile, Shizuno was in a meeting with her brother and Edward, who was impressed by her skills as a dark mage. They continued discussing the incident at the shopping mall, analyzing the details of what had happened. In a moment of frustration, Shizuno wished for a meteor to fall from the sky right then. After that, she went to the garden and found Moroha sleeping. He was dreaming about his past life and also remembering a very attractive girl who had a relationship with him in that previous life. He recalled the moment when he used the forbidden spell Ice Inferno, freezing all living beings across an entire country. Moroha woke up from that trance and realized it was yet another memory from a past life. It already seemed like he had two previous lives, and when he opened his eyes, he panicked upon realizing Shizuno was lying on top of him. When he looked at her, he asked if she had been the witch of the underworld in his past life. Shizuno said she didn't know what he was talking about, but Moroha kept staring at her. She thought he wanted to kiss her and began leaning in closer. However, Moroha backed away and said that wasn't his intention. Just then, Satsuki showed up and interrupted them, rushing at Moroha and trying to beat him up, scolding him for supposedly setting his sister aside in favor of Shizuno. At the same time, Edward received a report from Mary stating that the metaphysical monster had been defeated by only 3 people. He found that suspicious and grew curious about seeing Moroha's true power. That night, Moroha went to visit Shizuno at her home, and upon entering the dining room, he encountered her older brother as expected. For that occasion, Moroha was forced to wear fancy clothes, and the academy director asked him if his sister was useful to him as a friend. Moroha answered that yes, she was a great friend. The director then said that she would continue doing her best to assist him. Not only that, but he added that Moroha could easily reach his rank. He explained that one of the requirements was to defeat a metaphysical monster of a higher level than normal, and that, from his perspective, Moroha had already fulfilled that requirement. Moroha replied that he and his 2 friends had defeated the monster, but the director said he would promote Moroha to S rank if the girls admitted they had done nothing and had only been saved. He also tried to tempt him with fame and fortune, which I personally would have accepted without hesitation. Shizuno, however, objected, stating that if he rose to the highest rank, his freedom would be taken from him. But the director quickly cut her off, saying that decision was not hers to make. After dinner, Shizuno apologized for her brother's selfish behavior. When Moroha saw her bedroom, he was puzzled because the atmosphere didn't match her personality. She explained that family members weren't allowed to have their own hobbies. She then rested her head on the edge of the bed and said that sleeping was the only thing she chose for herself because she enjoyed her dreams. She then began to recall scenes from her past life when she was young and met her beloved. After that, the 2 of them stood together on the balcony to breathe in the fresh air. Shizuno got closer to Moroha, saying it was cold. He remembered how she used to sit in his lap in the past and asked if she wanted to go back inside, but she refused, saying the atmosphere inside the house was too depressing. Later, on his way home, Moroha noticed that he was being followed by someone on a motorcycle. To avoid causing trouble for the driver, he asked to be dropped off in the middle of the road, saying he wanted to enjoy the fresh air before heading home. As soon as the driver left, he walked to a park and ordered his pursuer to come out of hiding. He said he had no intention of hurting them and offered to settle things peacefully. However, the person activated their plana and summoned their weapon, challenging Moroha to a fight. Moroha dodged all of his opponent's strikes, waiting for the right moment to counter. When he found an opening, he used his strength and summoned his sword. The fight continued with both of them exchanging blows and attacks. But in the middle of the battle, Moroha managed to push his opponent back for a moment, and when he did, he noticed something unexpected. It was a woman, because he felt a wonderful sensation during the impact. She quickly transformed her weapon into 2 daggers and continued attacking him, until Moroha recalled a glimpse of his past when he was a tyrannical villain and began reciting the spell he used back then. He attacked the girl with the skill Breeze Blade, managing to destroy her clothes and defeat her. It turns out Edward had sent his maid to test Moroha's skills, and he told Shizuno's brother that he couldn't appoint Moroha as ranks yet because he was still too weak. Even so, his maid was lying on the bed in front of him, covered in wounds, furious that the tide had turned against her in mere seconds. When Moroha returned home, he was surprised to find Maya there to greet him. When he asked how she got in, she told him she would be his roommate starting today, based on her sister's decision. Moroha stayed awake all night, since he wasn't used to sleeping next to anyone, especially a minor, and he also worried whether this could lead to him getting arrested. The next day, Shizuno was shocked by her brother's decision to send her to Britain to continue her studies, since there weren't enough dark mages there. When she opposed it, he told her it was a unanimous decision from the family. At the same time, Satsuki became furious over Maya becoming Moroha's roommate. Shizuno didn't have the chance to tell them about her brother's decision until the end of the day, and she felt disappointed for being separated from Moroha. The following day, Satsuki ran through the academy until she reached Moroha to tell him that Mary had rejected her request to be his roommate instead of Maya. Irritated, she argued with Moroha, saying no one but her would be his little sister. After calming down, she noticed that Shizuno was absent. Meanwhile, Shizuno was having lunch with her brother and Edward, who was pleased that she had agreed to study in Britain. She then took a call from Mary, who said it was urgent, but it turned out to be Moroha on the line. He asked her why she hadn't shown up, and she pretended to be sick, but he knew she was lying, so he threatened to break into her house if she didn't tell him the truth. She was then forced to admit she was being transferred to study in Britain. He told her that he would be the first to support her if that decision had truly come from her, but he knew it hadn't. She was surprised by his dissatisfaction with the situation, and when he asked her not to listen to her brother, she recalled childhood memories and the things she had been subjected to and told him she couldn't do that. She was bound to this family. Moroha grew furious and said no one has the right to restrict another person's freedom. Shizuno was stunned to hear him saying the same things he had said in their past life. Before hanging up, she told him she'd be fine, but when she returned to the table, she saw her servant approaching her brother to inform him that a guest wished to speak with him. When her brother told him to send the guest away, Moroha burst into the room through the window. Her brother was furious and said what he did was trespassing. Edward kept his composure and simply observed. Then Moroha told him to stop acting like a fool and turned to Shizuno's brother, saying that he had been the one who defeated the super monster that day by himself. He said this so he could be promoted to S class and keep Shizuno by his side. She called him an idiot because, in their past life, they had died, but in this one, they were only being kept apart. He told her that since he couldn't remember their past lives, all he could do was live in the present. With that, he asked her to reveal her true feelings. She finally gave in and said she wanted to be with him. Then he reached out his hand to her and asked her to stay with him forever. She ran toward him and hugged him just like she used to in the past, feeling as if she had finally been freed from the chains of her family. Then, Moroha carried her, and they fled together. Her brother was furious and asked Edward to help retrieve his sister. Edward said it would cause too much trouble to interfere in internal affairs. So, Shizuno's brother formally requested Edward's help and allowed him to use his powers to bring her back. At that moment, Moroha and his companions were on their way back when they were suddenly attacked in their car. But Moroha sensed the danger and used his ability to prevent the car from crashing into anything. When they stopped, they found the assassin maid standing in front of them, next to Edward, who politely asked that Shizuno be returned. Moroha refused to hand her over. Edward then said he understood what Moroha was trying to do, but if he wanted to keep Shizuno, he would need to prove that he defeated that creature on his own. Edward challenged him to a duel, and Moroha accepted. They moved to an isolated area and used their powers to summon their weapons, finally launching into battle. Moroha was surprised by Edward's strength. Meanwhile, Shizuno and Satsuki were facing the assassin maid, who also proved to be a formidable opponent. During the fight, Edward successfully blocked one of Moroha's attacks. Then, to help the novice understand, Edward explained that he used an ability that allowed him to concentrate all the plasma in his body into a single point, making him invincible for a fraction of a second. Moroha moved far enough away from him and began writing spells to summon the fire element. But Edward didn't give him any room to cast long spells and charged at him. Moroha barely survived. Suddenly, Moroha was struck by a familiar sensation like the one he had felt in the academy hallway. It was Maya, who had activated her dream field ability, which allowed them to fight without causing death or serious injury. She approached him and told him not to worry about anything and to fight with his full power. Moroha was thrilled now he could unleash his full strength without holding back. He began writing his spells again. When Edward tried to stop him, he was surprised to see that this time, Moroha disappeared and reappeared behind him, moving swiftly while still writing his spell. When he finished, he summoned a fireball and fused it with his sword to launch a devastating attack. With that blow, Moroha managed to shatter Edward's sword, but was quickly shocked to discover that his enemy had 2 summoning necklaces. As soon as Edward grabbed the second one, his appearance completely changed, and he transformed into a fully armored knight. Meanwhile, Elena managed to defeat both Satsuki and Shizuno together, but stopped when the glowing lights from the forest caught her attention. Back at the battlefield, Moroha and Edward were clashing with all their might, until Edward told him to surrender, claiming that he was immortal and could not be defeated. However, Moroha managed to crack part of Edward's mask and continued fighting while thinking of a way to win and protect Shizuno. That's when Moroha remembered his past, how he took thousands of lives, destroyed many nations, and turned the entire world against him. Yet, she always stayed by his side. He then recalled that Shizuno had been his wife in a previous life. Determined, he flew to the highest point in the sky and began writing his spell to summon the powers of ice. Everyone was stunned to witness his mastery of the 8th step of dark magic, and Shizuno realized that he was reciting a forbidden spell. Edward, in turn, gladly accepted his defeat in exchange for forcing Moroha to lose his humanity, becoming one of the few Rankas saviors in the world. Moroha used his ability and unleashed ice throughout the entire forest, freezing everything in its path until it reached Edward and took him down. That night, after they returned home, Satsuki was surprised when Moroha said he hadn't defeated Edward, but had merely frozen him to immobilize him. Then, he asked Mary to tell him how to truly defeat him. Suddenly, Edward appeared wanting to talk, and Moroha raised his guard. But Edward said he had no intention of doing anything, and admitted that Moroha had defeated him, which is why he decided to cancel Shizuno's transfer to Great Britain. Then, he asked Moroha why he hadn't avoided his punch back when they were at the cafe, and Moroha replied that he knew Edward wouldn't punch him. Edward asked how he knew that, and Moroha said it was clearly perceptible in Edward's own mana. Edward found that very strange and new to him, so he simply congratulated Moroha for becoming a rank S and walked away. 1 month later, summer vacation arrived, and Jin, the leader of the assault team, decided to organize a camp on a small island. He warned them they wouldn't be there just for vacation. Satsuki decided to buy a special swimsuit, which excited Moroha. While Shizuno was at the palace choosing among different swimsuits her brother had ordered from the best designers. When it was time to leave, the students gathered in front of Mary, who wrote a magical spell to activate a portal and transport them to the island. Satsuki jumped into the water with excitement, but was surprised when the waves hit the top of her bikini and carried it to another world. Maya and Momo, who were embarrassed to show off their swimsuits, were also there. Yes, most of the girls already wanted to impress Moroha and try to have a child with him. Moroha was then surprised by the squad's vice leader, Kanzaki, who was behind him and grabbed his butt, until suddenly her older brother, who is the squad leader, held her by the head and announced that training would begin immediately. He explained that everyone could choose their own challenges during the camp, and that they should complete them before the last day on the island. Satsuki decided to challenge Momo to a speed race, which Momo had to accept. Moroha took on the role of referee and blew the whistle to start the race. Each of them used their own abilities to boost their speed, but Momo managed to win against Satsuki in every round thanks to her incredible swiftness. While everyone was having fun, Moroha received a phone call from Edward, who told him he had agreed with the academy principal, Mary, to hold a meeting of the 6 chiefs. However, Edward was surprised by Moroha's lack of interest in the details. After hanging up, Moroha went to the others and told them Edward had nominated him for rank S, but the Emperor of Russia had strongly opposed the idea. Maya commented that he was a very frightening person. Meanwhile, Mary took a train and sat down, looking at the photos of the students on vacation that her sister had sent her. She was happy to see that Maya had made so many friends. Satsuki, still bothered by her defeat, said she knew how hard it was to win, and that she would feel like a burden if she couldn't surpass Momo, since Momo herself was a specialist in speed. Moroha remembered a glimpse from his previous life and how he always fought, never wanting Satsuki to step onto the battlefield, because he knew how powerful her hidden talents were and feared that, If they emerged, he might not be able to control them. Satsuki reflected on what Moroha had said and recognized that she had her own strengths, so she asked him to be her training partner. She was happy when he agreed and promised they would train every day, so she could reach her best state for competition. The next day, Mary met one of the executives from the Japanese branch of the agency, Surga Andu, who told her he would use a portal so they could travel to London together. As soon as they arrived, Mary asked if the rumors about all the rescuers being transferred to Tokyo were true, and Surga confirmed. At night, the students had an outdoor barbecue, with Satsuki cooking while everyone admired her skills. Kami, who always caused trouble, turned to Moroha and sarcastically said he'd heard rumors about the cancellation of his promotion to Rankus, and that he might have to start over as a messenger, becoming the youngest member of the squad. Moroha then asked if Kami had been a messenger last year, which made the boy remember a sad time in his life. At night, Satsuki continued training hard under Moroha's supervision, who told her she needed to run 100 meters over the surface of the water to match Moroha's speed. Meanwhile, some girls watched as Satsuki tried to reach the required distance until she became exhausted and laid down on the beach. After a while of training, she told Moroha that she sensed something strange coming from the other side of the sea. Moroha told her that he didn't see anything unusual. She figured it was probably just the cold air, so they decided to stop practicing for the time being. But Satsuki's feeling of unease increased when she saw a dark mist on the other side. A few days later, the camp came to an end, and everyone celebrated the end of summer vacation with fireworks at night. Maya shot a firework projectile at Moroha's butt, which he interpreted as a declaration of war and used his magical ability to chase after them, while Shizuno asked Moroha to bring more fireworks. On the way back, he found his soft cannon girl and saw her wearing a kimono over her swimsuit. She explained that her brother had forced her to wear a swimsuit and asked him to take a walk with her, so they sat down and watched the sea and the fireworks together. Meanwhile, the meeting of the 6 leaders began, and Edward started talking about Moroha's nomination for Rankus. The Russian representative expressed her objection to the proposal, while Sorgo agreed to officially appoint Moroha to Rankus. The Russian objected again, while Sorgo firmly reinforced his proposal. Some officials became curious about Moroha's full capabilities, and Edward told them he had defeated a 9-headed monster alone, calling it a miracle. Suddenly, Sorgo felt a tightness in his chest and said that a super monster had appeared while they were talking. On the other side, a massive monster emerged from the sea. Then, helicopters arrived at the monster's location, and the squad members gathered to collect information about its characteristics. Jin then informed them that the monster was in the south, and would cross the coast of the island they were on and reach the city of Honshu in 1 hour, and that the Japanese headquarters had ordered them to retreat and not confront the monster in the absence of Japan's savior. Moroha noticed Satsuki's nervousness and her trembling hands, so he held her hand to reassure her and told her everything would be all right. On the other hand, the monster managed to destroy one of the helicopters and cut off the transmission. Jin thought that perhaps it was aggressive or had sharp intelligence, and ordered everyone to gather their belongings to prepare for departure. Meanwhile, the evacuation of the island began before the monster's arrival, and at the same time, the leaders of the nations decided to prevent Sorgo from returning, and they concluded that from now on, Moroha would have to face this creature alone and prove his worth. One of the powerful members used his magical ability to put Sorgo to sleep, and Edward simply wished that Moroha would be able to handle the situation. Moroha then chose to confront the monster along with his partners, and Maya decided to stay with them and support them as much as possible. They were surprised when, suddenly, Jin joined them and said that now he was representing only himself and was no longer there as the group's leader. But soon the other members joined as well and asked for permission to fight by their side. Jin told them he wasn't the leader now and agreed to join them. Then, they picked up their weapons and recited the group's anthem to motivate themselves against the enemy. By morning, the monster was approaching the coast, so Jin made a plan to defeat it and said they would lure it in using the harbor sirens, while the dark mages would attack from the left and Moroha from the front. To their surprise, the monster stopped moving, and they were unable to restrain it. The clumsy Kami fired fireworks at the monster, but failed to hit it even once, although his actions did make the monster start moving again. When Kami saw the monster up close, he ran away. The group members became afraid when they saw the monster up close, and began to doubt if their plan would actually work. But Mizuno wrote her spell to freeze it with ice, and the others attacked it with their various magical abilities, managing to cause some damage and unbalance it. Take used his necklace and summoned his bow and arrows to get rid of the insects. Before they got close enough, and the monster began infiltrating the city, destroying buildings. Jin then summoned his weapon and jumped toward the monster to attack it, remembering when he trained with Moroha and had asked him how he could reach his level of strength. Moroha had answered that all he needed was determination. Then Jin managed to land a powerful blow on the monster, creating a large hole in its body. Meanwhile, Moroha played music through loudspeakers to attract the monster's attention. Right after that, Moroha grabbed his sword and charged toward the monster at full speed, combining his magical ability with his sword to land a fatal strike, successfully cutting off its arm. The monster tried to strike back with its other arm, but Moroha blocked the attack. Jin joined Moroha and succeeded in slicing off one of the monster's legs. Then, Moroha approached him and said that the dark mages had managed to destroy the monster's left leg, but they were shocked to discover that its body had transformed into several faces. That's when they realized they were dealing with a multi-headed monster. Jin ordered everyone to retreat, but the monster began emitting disturbing sounds through its heads, and no one could move, not even Moroha, who tried to shield himself with a magical barrier. Satsuki, remembering Moroha's advice about staying calm and thinking clearly, picked up her sword, concentrated a large amount of her prana, and rushed toward the insects, smashing them one by one. Maya then ran to Moroha and told him that Satsuki was out of control, attacking anyone in her way. She told to flee while she handled the monster alone. Then she climbed onto the creature's back and began thinking of a strategy to defeat it. At that moment, she had a glimpse of her past. Without hesitation, she plunged her sword into the monster's body and started tearing it apart. Then he saw Satsuki collapse after defeating a large number of insects. Meanwhile, Maya continued slicing the monster into pieces, and noticed that Maya was creating a protective barrier around their companions. That's when she remembered all the happy moments they had shared, and decided that she would not allow that creature to take away the good things in her life. With all her determination, she drove her sword even deeper into the monster's body, channeled all her magical power, and successfully disintegrated the enemy. When Sorgo regained consciousness and realized that the monster had disappeared from the radar, he was relieved to know that Moroha had handled the situation. So, all 6 powerful representatives reluctantly accepted Moroha's right to ascend to rank S. Edward then declared that Moroha would be treated as a student until his graduation, having up to 3 years to be happy and enjoy his life. Meanwhile, the squad members were helping the wounded, and Moroha sat on the beach beside Satsuki. Sometime later, already back from the camp, Moroha went to meet the new exchange student from Russia. He had been tricked by an anonymous love letter that forced him to go to the meeting place, only to realize it was all a setup to lure him in. However, the girl assured him it wasn't a trap, and surprised him by saying she had fallen in love with him at first sight. Without hesitation, she offered him an official relationship, but Moroha surprised her by refusing the request, explaining that he couldn't date her without getting to know her better first. Elena was disappointed and said she wanted to die. Trying to ease the situation, Moroha suggested that they start as friends. After that, Elena went to the classroom, while the other students, especially the boys, watched with curiosity. She then wrote her name on the blackboard in Russian and introduced herself as Elena. Satsuki, curious, asked her father's name, since Russians often have compound names. Elena replied that she had no parents and explained that her last name, Arshavina, came from the institution where she grew up, and also revealed that she had a younger brother. Shizuno then asked what her goals were in joining the academy, and was surprised to hear Elena say she had come there to start a relationship with Moroha. Satsuki wasted no time, ran over to her, and declared that she would never allow that, while Moroha simply covered his face with his hands, completely embarrassed. Satsuki continued saying that she would never approve of such a relationship, because she saw Moroha as her older brother. If Elena wanted to express her feelings for him, she would have to go through her first, but to her surprise, Elena remained completely calm in response. Then she asked Satsuki to let her brother decide for himself. At that moment, Shizuno stepped closer and asked Elena what exactly she liked about Moroha. Elena replied that it was love at first sight, but Shizuno and the others were not satisfied with that answer. Then Elena asked Shizuno what she liked about Moroha, but was also not satisfied when she replied that she liked everything about him. And so, a tense atmosphere of rivalry emerged between the two, while the others watched in surprise. After class, everyone went to the training field, and the girls were surprised to discover that Moroha already knew that. For some reason, Elena wanted to be with him. Maya then explained that the whole academy was talking about it. Mary got excited and said it was great to be young and unaffected by differences of country, race, or culture, and encouraged everyone to be friendly with Elena. Satsuki and Shizuno approached Elena outside the academy and asked if she had been watching them the entire time, but she ignored the question and invited Moroha to go out with her the next day. Satsuki, however, refused to let her go out alone with him and decided she would go too. Shizuno said she couldn't come because she was busy, so it was up to Satsuki to accompany Elena. Elena, however, promised Satsuki that she would prove she deserved to be Moroha's girlfriend. The next day, Moroha waited for a while until Elena appeared, wearing a cat girl outfit, which left him extremely embarrassed by the looks of the people around them. He told her that kind of outfit was strange to Japanese people, and Elena was frustrated to hear that. She explained that she had heard Japanese boys liked that kind of clothing, and that she had studied Japanese culture from a reliable source to become his girlfriend. Right after, he received a call from Satsuki, who said she couldn't go out with him because she was helping Sophia cook after she had broken her arm during the church service. That was when Moroha realized he would have to spend the entire day alone with Elena. They began walking until they stopped in front of a restaurant. Moroha noticed her desire and curiosity to go in, so they decided to have lunch there. During their conversation, Elena commented that she had never eaten at that restaurant before because she was always busy. He asked about schools in Russia, but she replied that there were no traditional schools there, since rescuers were trained in a military style with intense physical training. Moroha realized she had gone through a lot before moving to Japan, and decided to offer her a fun day so she could relax and make friends. Elena was impressed by his kindness, and wondered if he didn't suspect that she could be a mercenary. He asked if she was planning to get rid of him soon, but Elena denied it, saying that seeing him reminded her of someone she had met a long time ago. Moroha was surprised when she said he resembled Edward. Meanwhile, Shizuno was interrogating the maid, asking questions about Edward and also requested information about Elena. When the maid heard some details about Elena from Shizuno, she quickly came to the conclusion that Elena was a man-eater. Meanwhile, Moroha and Elena sat in a park, watching some children play. He commented that it reminded him of when he used to play tag with his uncle, since his parents had died when he was young. He looked at her and realized that they both shared the same feeling of being parentless, and he asked her to meet his younger brother someday. She grabbed her necklace and left, then asked him to meet her uncle and aunt. That night, a mysterious crow named Conrad landed on Elena's balcony and said she was doing well so far, but they should exploit Moroha's weakness to guarantee the mission's success. She replied that his weakness was family, so Conrad ordered her to keep seducing him until she became his weakness, in exchange for begging the Thunder Emperor to allow her to spend time with her brother. The next day, Elena went to the academy and, upon opening her locker, found an envelope with a letter from Shizuno. That night, she went to meet her, and Shizuno challenged her to a duel, revealing that she knew everything about her. She stated that Elena was Russia's trump card, a secret assassin, and promised she wouldn't let her get close to Moroha. Elena then grabbed her necklace, summoned her weapon, and began attacking Shizuno, who countered with ice magic. Elena's body started to gradually freeze, but she resisted and kept running. Taking advantage of a perfect moment, she surprised Shizuno with an attack from behind, but Shizuno's ice dragon emerged from her wand and saved her in time. The dragon kept attacking Elena, trying to freeze her, and she found herself cornered, unable to match Shizuno's power. Shizuno was surprised to see Elena's weapon could absorb her ice attack. Determined to protect her brother's future, Elena kept trading blows with her until she managed to defeat the dragon and seal it back into scepter form. She then placed her sword against Shizuno's neck and threatened her, demanding that she not reveal her identity and not interfere between her and Moroha, or else she would eliminate her. Shizuno said she would leave a deep scar on Elena's face, so she would be ashamed to show herself in front of Moroha again. But Shizuno added that he wouldn't hate her for that. However, Elena fled as soon as the academy teacher appeared and interrupted the fight, reminding them that duels between saviors were forbidden. The next day, to everyone's surprise, Shizuno was placed under curfew, and Elena didn't show up at the academy the entire day. Moroha found it strange and decided to visit Shizuno at her house. There, she told him about Elena, revealing that she possessed a demon sword known to devour plana and magic mana, and reminded him that Edward had been wounded by that blade in the past. Moroha tried to rationalize everything, not realizing that Elena was a hired assassin. But upon seeing the wound on Shizuno's leg and hearing what happened, he became concerned. Before she could finish speaking, he hugged her and told her to take care. He also assured her that, even knowing she was an assassin, it wouldn't change anything, because he believed she wasn't a bad person deep down. Meanwhile, Elena was suffering from the pain of the wound and had a nightmare about her brother, until, suddenly, she felt Conrad's presence, now in the form of a terrifying cat. He woke her up to warn her that Moroha had discovered her identity. Then he and Satsuki showed up at her door. To stop them from coming in, Elena pretended she wasn't home, but Satsuki opened the window to check, so the two of them entered and spent some time with her. Moroha realized that her wound was a combination of Shizuno's ability and a curse, so he helped her heal. When Satsuki sat next to them, Elena asked if they were really siblings. Moroha explained that they had been siblings in their past lives, and that it was a true miracle they had reincarnated in the same era. He also mentioned that all human relationships are based on miracles, including the fact that they were all together now. Later that night, Elena woke up and saw that Moroha was still there, sleeping beside her and holding her hand. The next day, their classmates began taking turns visiting her to see how she was doing, and they even prepared food for her. At night, Sophie showed up and asked if she was enjoying life in Japan. She also suggested that Elena join the Japanese branch of the agency after graduation, but Elena refused, saying she couldn't betray her brother. At that moment, she realized her mission was failing, as she had started to love the people around her. When Moroha returned, she invited him to go out with her on the next holiday. A few days later, Moroha noticed Elena sitting alone on the bus, looking very distracted. Meanwhile, Shizuno was surprised when Satsuki said that Moroha and Elena were going out together today. When they arrived at their destination, Moroha was thrilled when it looked like Elena was about to take off her clothes in the middle of the street. But suddenly, she surprised him by removing her cloak, grabbing her necklace, summoning a man-devouring sword, and revealing her true identity. She then rushed toward him with the intent to kill. At the same time, Shizuno and Satsuki arrived at the scene, but were blocked by the girl with the sturdy body. Satsuki told Shizuno to go ahead while she dealt with Sophie. When Sophie tried to stop her, Satsuki activated her plana and stood right in front of her, challenging her to a duel. Meanwhile, Moroha and Elena were fighting. She tried attacking him with several strikes until their swords clashed. That's when he realized that her sword could absorb his plana just by touching it. He backed off to a safe distance and launched a magical attack, but was surprised to see his fireball reflected back at him, burning his sword. Trying to react, he struck at her with multiple blows, but Elena absorbed the plasma quickly without needing the blades to touch. She then got close and delivered a powerful kick to his chest. Meanwhile, Satsuki was facing Sophie, and seeing the fight getting serious, Sophie used her necklace to summon her weapon. Moroha, still trying to think of a way to deal with the situation, suddenly remembered a part of his past when he faced an entire army alone and shed blood until his body and sword were completely stained. So, he decided to use that strength now against Elena, who rushed in to finish him off, but was surprised when he dodged and hit her with a precise strike. Meanwhile, Satsuki was shocked to see Sophie's weapon disintegrating. Sophie explained that she had never been able to find a weapon that could withstand her power in the past, and then began attacking Satsuki with all her might. That was when Satsuki remembered Moroha's advice. She tried to strike Sophie with her sword, but the weapon couldn't withstand the blow and immediately shattered. Then, Satsuki used all her power to completely disintegrate Sophie's weapon. and without her weapon, Sophie admitted defeat and approached Satsuki to give her a taste of paradise. On the other side, Elena fell to the ground after Moroha's strike, and he told her that no matter how much she tried to fight him, the result wouldn't change. Furious, Elena grabbed her sword again to try to finish him off, but was defeated once more. Moroha realized she was fighting because of her supposed brother and told her that, in the past, he had failed to save his parents and didn't want her to go through the same thing. He promised to save her brother no matter what. Elena hesitated to keep fighting, and then Shizuno appeared, saying there was no reason to continue because Elena never had a brother. The director of the institution where she grew up had told Shizuno that Elena had been abandoned alone on a snowy night. Elena refused to believe it, so Shizuno asked her to say his name, age, or even describe her brother's features. But she couldn't remember anything. Suddenly, Conrad interrupted her thoughts, confirming Shizuno was right. He revealed that he had planted the illusion of the brother in her mind, and that, if she thought a bit more, she'd realize he was never real. Desperate, Elena began to cry and wished she were dead. When Moroha tried to approach her, Conrad said no sound would reach her, as he had taken control of her body. Using Elena's body, Conrad attacked Moroha and explained that a savior can be possessed when their mind becomes as distracted and passive as hers. He then challenged Moroha to continue the fight, this time with the injured Shizuno present. They exchanged violent attacks until Conrad managed to absorb a large portion of Moroha's power, determined to end it. Moroha summoned his legendary sword and destroyed Elena's sword. Then, he used his magic to expel Conrad from her body, shattering her necklace and leaving her unconscious. Afterward, Moroha approached Elena and said he was ready to be the reason she kept living and that he would become her family. Crying, Elena hugged him tightly. Meanwhile, Conrad, with his eyes severely wounded, tried to approach the savior of Russia for support, but she pushed him away, saying she would not forgive his failure. She was impressed by Moroha's ability to destroy the mind behind the man-devouring sword and began plotting a new scheme. Moroha then traveled to Russia in search of an officer who could give him information about the whereabouts of the Empress of Lightning. However, to his surprise, the officer used his power and attacked him, saying he first needed to test his loyalty. Moroha stepped back and, recalling a glimpse of his past as a mage, began chanting spells. He used a lightning storm to teach the officer a lesson, forcing him to surrender within seconds. After capturing the officer, Moroha and his group began interrogating him about the Empress of Lightning, but he denied knowing anything. Moroha then declared that he had come to Russia to start a war, and that his next targets were the commanders serving the Empress. Angela was surprised by his words and asked why he would give information to the enemy if his goal was war. He replied that taking hostages and interrogating them was a waste of time. The officer laughed sarcastically and called Moroha naive. Without hesitation, Moroha stabbed him and spoke about his memories from past lives, recalling how he always stood alone against countless enemies. He continued to torture the officer with stabs until he finally gave in. Laughing, Moroha explained to Angela that the man wouldn't die from a simple stab, as he was a level of fighter. He then decided that, until he got enough information, he would destroy the regional commanders of Russia while also forcing the Empress of Lightning to make a move. Meanwhile, the officer managed to escape and fled to the Empress's palace. Upon arrival, he knelt before the Empress and reported his defeat to Moroha. He begged for a second chance, but she refused and said she hated failure. When he mentioned that Moroha hadn't managed to kill him with the lightning storm, thinking it was important information, she accepted his loyalty, but instead of sparing him, she killed him, burning him along with the entire palace. Meanwhile, elsewhere, she sipped her drink while her followers discussed Moroha's next move. She decided to reinforce the defenses, but was surprised to realize she would have to give up all of eastern Siberia in order to completely surround him. In the middle of the night, Moroha woke up on the train and didn't find Angela sleeping by his side. When he left the cabin, he saw her on the phone and assumed she might be talking to Edward. The next day, Satsuki was furious when she found out that Elena wanted to become Moroha's little sister, saying that she had always been his only sister throughout time and space. She said Moroha had told her he would be her family, and she was tired of their arguments over meaningless things. So, she asked them to stop fighting and to think about Moroha, who was fighting a war alone for their sake. After that, they left and ran into Maya on the way, who had been waiting for Satsuki to return and win her war. And for some reason, maybe foolishness, Satsuki believed Moroha would never lose. Meanwhile, Moroha and Angela arrived in the enemy city and defeated more guards who tried to stop them. He said his name out loud so they would remember him later, after discovering that the agency branch in that city had been shut down. Then, he went to the next region and found that branch was also inactive. He kept moving from city to city, destroying the agency's staff and headquarters, until he reached a place where he sensed he was being watched by many people. He asked Angela if there was anywhere nearby where he could fight freely, and she said there was a large forest not far from there. So, he decided to go check the place alone, but was followed by 8 mysterious people. Once he reached the forest, he asked them to reveal themselves. The commander of the Krasnoyarsk region, named Kursin Romanovich, appeared in front of him and said that all the surrounding commanders were a wreck. He advised Moroha to return to Japan, saying that most of them would die if they fought him. However, at the same time, they couldn't disobey the orders of the Empress of Lightning. But Moroha insisted on facing them no matter what and summoned his sword. He was caught off guard by an attack from the other commanders using the Frozen Shadow and realized he needed a more open area to move freely. He managed to distance himself from them to a safe range, but quickly realized they had the ability to clone themselves. Surrounded on all sides, the enemies were shocked to see that Moroha managed to block all their attacks at once. Even so, they kept attacking, determined to avenge the death of their leader. Not understanding anything they were saying, Moroha was caught off guard by a fire attack from behind. He pushed the twins away to keep them from getting hurt and managed to block the flames. However, he started feeling weak and suffocated. He quickly realized he had inhaled a poisonous gas. Suddenly, a masked enemy appeared before him, but Moroha struck quickly and knocked him down with a single blow. Kursin reappeared and tried to trap him using the same trick, but Moroha wrote a spell and jumped into the air to confront him. Then, he used ice magic to defeat him with a single strike, realizing he had already eliminated 4 of the 8 enemies. Suddenly, he sensed the presence of another one. He asked why she was going easy on him, and she replied that it was because he had saved the twins. She was surprised to realize that Moroha had no intention of killing anyone, which is why she didn't attack him like the others. But when she heard the voice of the twins, Moroha asked her to pretend she had been defeated. After saying that, he gently tapped her forehead and escaped quickly. The enemies kept chasing him, but Moroha surprised them with an attack and managed to defeat them, leaving only one opponent. When he reached him, he saw Angela standing in front of him. Then, he turned around and saw that his final enemy was holding a woman. Through her, the Empress of Lightning appeared, casting a deadly spell upon them. Moroha pushed Angela away and took all the damage himself. At that moment, he remembered his past life, when Satsuki and his gothic girl were killed by a huge monster. However, he regained consciousness and found himself in a room, surprised to see Angela sleeping beside him, naked, and that he was also without clothes. When she woke up and saw that Moroha had regained consciousness, Angela explained that she had to do that to heal him from the effects of the Lightning Empress's spell. She also said she broke the mirror of the last follower, allowing them to escape. After that, she carried Moroha to a nearby house, laid him on a bed, and used her own body to heal him. Moroha thanked her for the help, but they were interrupted when a girl walked into the room. Seeing them naked, she assumed they were creating the next savior of humanity and quickly left, not wanting to interrupt such an important moment. Later, they all sat down together at the dinner table, where the owner of the house introduced herself. Her name was Katia, a commander serving the Empress, half Japanese and half Russian. She said she had been watching them while they were observing one of her followers. Then she explained that she didn't want to fight Moroha because she realized he had no intention of killing his enemies. She noticed that Moroha made sure the people he defeated were still alive. That made her believe he was the right person to fulfill her wish, and she asked him to help her friend Yuli escape from the Lightning Empress. On the way, Katya told them that most of the Empress's servants in Russia had no family, so no one complained when they were mistreated or sentenced to death after losing to an invincible enemy. Moreover, the Lightning Empress gathered her own children, forced them to fight each other, and named the survivors as her bodyguards. Moroha realized the same thing could happen to his friend, while Angela informed Edward about the Empress's location. Then Moroha walked up to her and commented that he was sure there were psychopaths in Russia. After arriving at the station, Moroha gently hit Katya on the forehead, knocking her out for a while, since he decided not to take her with them, as her country would need her in the future. Then he left the station and told Angela not to come with him to face the Empress, because he didn't fully trust his ability to protect someone while fighting her. Meanwhile, the Lightning Empress mocked the idea that Moroha hadn't killed any of her opponents and ordered her followers to eliminate the last person he had fought for failing to defeat him. She then stepped onto the palace balcony and, using her magic eye, spotted Moroha standing in the courtyard, ready to face her. Determined to test him, she cast a spell to greet him and was surprised to realize she had used 13th level dark magic to summon monsters and lightning soldiers. But Moroha, without hesitation, summoned his sword and began cutting down anyone in his path, leaving the Empress impressed with his resistance to her power. One of the guards reported to the Empress that he was moving so fast that the lightning couldn't keep up with him, and that he seemed used to fighting an entire army alone. So she decided to change her strategy and used a military method to corner him. Soon after, Moroha was caught off guard by the appearance of regional leaders, who brought with them the captured saviors Katya had mentioned. To Moroha's surprise, the Lightning Empress ordered her army to attack the prisoners instead of him, and they began to fall one by one before his eyes. She realized his weakness was his aversion to bloodshed and decided to use that against him. Suddenly, Moroha lost control of his body due to a gravity trap set by a girl, and just as they were about to finish him off from all sides, Angela appeared just in time to protect him, saying she would defend him under orders from the White Knight Edward. Angela said they didn't come alone, and suddenly a portal opened on the battlefield, summoning Satsuki and Shizuna. Moroha approached them as Elena appeared from another portal and joined him, stating that the girl who once killed men under the Empress's orders no longer existed. Then, she said that it was Moroha who helped her be reborn as a different and free person, and she wanted to share that feeling with everyone being used by the Empress. But the Empress's subordinates didn't listen to her and told their comrades to prepare for battle. Katya approached her friend and tried to remind him of who he was, but it seemed like he was being controlled by someone. So, Elena took the chance to sneak behind him and cut off the collar he was wearing, confirming her suspicion that the collar was controlling the captured saviors. That's when the background girl immediately recognized Katya. Angela decided to face the lightning monsters and offered the others a chance to join them to take down the Lightning Empire together. The battle began, and Moroha's army managed to defeat many monsters using magic and swords. Then the Lightning Empress ordered her guards to contact the Russian government and inform them that the city of Yekaterinburg was about to be wiped out. At that moment, Angela asked Moroha to face the Empress, as only he could defeat her. But before they could react, they were surprised to see the Empress chant a special song that boosted her power until a massive lightning giant appeared before them. Moroha ran toward the giant and combined his magic with his girls, striking the creature with a powerful blow, but it remained standing. Then he ordered everyone to duck as the giant launched a massive attack capable of killing them instantly. Moroha warned them about the giant's next move and thought that might be their end. But just then, he regained more of his memories and realized what he had to do. Quickly, he cast the Forbidden Water spell in front of the giant. Then he punched the ground hard, turning it into a vast sea area that immobilized the giant. With one final command, he made the waves crush the creature until it dissolved into particles and vanished from existence. Meanwhile, the Lightning Empress was stunned to have been defeated by Moroha. To make it worse, she saw her own guards fleeing, more afraid of Moroha than of her. When she turned to face him, Moroha was standing right in front of her. Desperate, she claimed she hadn't lost yet. But when she tried to use the dragon's thunderbolt, her magic failed against his water power. With no way out, she fell to her knees and begged him to let her live in exchange for becoming his servant. Moroha approached her and asked how she could beg for her life when she had mercilessly eliminated her own followers. The Empress replied that she didn't want to lose her empire and asked him not to take her power away. Moroha became even angrier and told her not to take other people's lives and property if she didn't want anyone to take hers. After that, news of Moroha and his friends' victory in the Russian war reached the academy, and everyone celebrated. Maya was disappointed because she thought he would return that night, but Maria told her to be patient until tomorrow. At night, Angela scolded Moroha for using a forbidden spell against the Lightning Empire and causing the entire map of Russia to change. The background girl tried to ease the tension and said scolding him in the sauna wasn't a good idea. Moroha questioned why he was sharing the same bathtub with the girls, and Angela told him that's the style of bathhouses in Finland. At that moment, the Russian extra reveals to everyone that she has already seen Moroha and Angela naked in bed. Moroha's girls are shocked. They ask Angela to explain, and she says it's a complicated situation. Satsuki is frustrated by the fact that her brother slept in the same bed with a British girl. The argument quickly shifts to Satsuki versus the Russian girl known for killing men, and the two begin a sauna heat endurance challenge. They continued doing that until the situation worsened and the girls started leaving the bathtub. Then, they began exercising inside the bathtub to test their endurance, attempting every kind of physical challenge under the extreme heat until Elena finally gave up, and Rango celebrated her victory, claiming she was the only true sister of Moroha. But she collapsed right afterward. Shizuno used ice magic to lower the temperature of the tub, freezing both Rango and Elena and destroying part of the bathtub, which resulted in both of them catching a cold due to the sudden temperature drop. After that, Shizuno sat outside with Moroha and asked him not to leave them behind again and to stop doing everything alone. She told him she would stay with him both in the past and in the present. He recalled the dream he had about his past, about the monster that exterminated everyone before his eyes, and felt it was a disturbing dream. Then she told him that it wasn't necessarily a dream about the past, maybe it was a glimpse of the future. The next day, Edward and Sorgo received a message from Mary about the return of the Russian group to Japan. Then, Sorgo felt a sinking feeling in her chest, signaling the imminent appearance of a super monster. On the other side, Moroha and his companions used a transportation portal to return to Japan after saying farewell to the girls. But suddenly, the Russians were surprised by a phone call. The girls then began traveling to Japan, and Maya ran toward them, expecting Moroha to appear next. But she was surprised that they had traveled without him and wondered why he had not come along. They then explained that Moroha had stayed in Russia to defeat the super monster that had just appeared there, and he was the only one who could defeat the creature, as the Empress had fallen into depression after her previous defeat. Maya said she had been feeling lonely ever since he left for Russia and had been anxiously waiting for his return. Seeing her sad, the girls offered to keep her company until Moroha returned, so she wouldn't feel alone. Meanwhile, Edward told Angela that Sorgo's pain, the other S-rank savior of Japan, was getting worse until she completely lost consciousness, and that meant that another powerful creature had appeared, stronger than anything they had faced so far. Edward asked everyone to prepare for any emergency, as he had a bad feeling. Sorgo's pain intensified until Edward approached her, and she grabbed his hand and told him that what was coming was not merely a supernatural monster, but an ancient dragon. The next day, the people of the city were shocked by a massive black cloud shaped like a vortex, from which a large black dragon descended. Everyone started running in all directions, and the academy began evacuating the non-combatant students. Shizuno felt as though the dragon had been waiting for Moroha's absence to appear. The members of the attacker squad gathered, and Jin told them that their enemy was a new, unknown species, and they would have to fight it without any S-rank support. Moroha was still in battle, the other S-rank in Japan was incapacitated, and Edward was on his way. The goal was to buy time while Director Mary prepared a transport gate to evacuate the entire population. Along with them, Angela approached and said she would join them as support on behalf of the United Kingdom. Jin agreed to include her in their ranks to strengthen their force. After that, they moved to a safe distance to observe the dragon and promised they would defeat it without Hamura otherwise. The academy would cease to exist. But Yurishibara noticed a smile on the dragon's face and told them the dragon was aware of their plan. The dragon then flew into the sky, confirming that it had discovered the trap they were setting. It reached the highest altitude, descended at full speed, and began spewing fire into the forest, forcing them out from behind the trees after burning everything down. When the dragon saw Rango, it headed straight toward her. She tried to run as fast as she could, but tripped along the way. When she turned around, she saw the dragon approaching her, trying to devour her, but Kanzaki saved her just in time by striking the dragon from behind. After that, a group formed to attack it from a distance using magic. The dragon formed a magical barrier in front of them and began writing spells through its eyes, managing to cancel out the team's magical abilities. They began to scatter in order to avoid the next attack, while the dragon used fire-resistant magic to burn the entire area. Meanwhile, Hamura managed to defeat the monster in Russia, but was shocked when he saw the dragon that had appeared in Japan. He remembered the nightmare he had about the deaths of Rango and Shizuno, and realized it was a glimpse of the future. He became furious with the dragon's repeated appearances every time they resurrected, tormenting him with the bitterness of loss. After that, the attack squad began launching every kind of assault against the dragon, but without success, as it continued to spew flames everywhere in an attempt to harm them. On the other side, Mary was reworking the transport portal to activate it. Then, Jin managed to leap onto the dragon's back, and just as he was about to drive his sword into it, the dragon threw him off. Kanzaki blocked the dragon's fire before it could hit Jin, but when she lowered her defense, the dragon struck them after disabling her barrier. It then began burning the trees and injuring several team members, including Momo, who fainted in Rango's arms. Meanwhile, the dragon's fire spread toward Mary and Maya, forcing her to abandon the portal in order to save her sister from the flames. When Maya decided to heal her, Mary told her to finish the spell from where she had left off so they could open the gate, and then transferred some of her powers to her before completely losing consciousness. Maya then put on her sister's hat, gained the confidence to open the portal and save everyone, and continued writing the spell until the dragon appeared in front of her and tried to attack. But Edward arrived just in time and blocked the dragon's blow with his shield, standing firm until Maya finished activating the spell and opened the gate. Soon after, Haimara appeared with Katya and Yuli. On another front, Shizuno thought that perhaps the dragon was toying with them, despite having the power to burn the entire city down, or maybe it was waiting for something to happen. So, she continued following Rango through the forest, and when the dragon tried to attack her, she was surprised to see that she wasn't harmed. Then, she saw Haimara approaching them with a furious expression. At that moment, Kanzaki tended to Jin's injuries, and when he saw Haimara, he asked them to go help him, but Haimara ordered everyone to retreat and care for the wounded. He warned Rango and Shizuno not to interfere and swore revenge against the black dragon that had taken everything from him in his past life. He then began his assault, charging at the dragon with his sword, casting a fire spell and merging it with his blade to create a superpower within the weapon. He then unleashed a devastating blow against the dragon, but was stunned to realize it had no effect at all. Then, Orohibara told him that magic would not work. The dragon had the ability to cancel it entirely. He decided to end things using only his plana, but froze when he heard the dragon's thunderous roar that echoed through the entire city. No one could move until the roar stopped. Moroha realized that his blade had been shattered by the roar. Then the dragon approached him and pulled several insects from its body. Jin realized it had all the powers of the previous monsters combined, and Orohibara noticed the dragon had been waiting for Moroha the entire time. Moroha continued tearing the insects apart until everyone was shocked to see him disappear and reappear behind Satsuki and Orohibara. Before they could react, the dragon unleashed a blast of black fire, causing their bodies to stiffen. Moroha was shocked to realize that the story was repeating itself again, and the dragon would take the ones he loved away from him. So he grabbed his sword, leapt at the dragon, and struck it multiple times, inflicting deep wounds on its back. But Kaguya noticed he was inscribing magical runes onto the dragon runes the dragon wouldn't be able to neutralize because they came from within his own body. Angela tried to stop him from continuing the spell before it wiped the city off the map. But Elena said he was no longer the Moroha they once knew, and that he had become a deadly monster, just like her. When he finished activating the runes, the spell unleashed a loud, blinding explosion that consumed everything around it. Meanwhile, within her mind, Satsuki was trying to awaken and break free from the dragon's paralysis in order to help Moroha, while Orohibara mocked her pathetic end, despite her power as the witch of the underworld. Both of them kept blaming themselves for having failed again, just as they did in the past. Then, each of them tried to break free by reaching into the memories of their past lives, and once they remembered everything, they realized the time had come to return and save Moroha. They broke free, and Moroha was stunned to see them standing by his side after activating his forbidden spell. Then, they approached him in their past forms and told him they would always be together in all times and places. Moroha remembered his most recent past life and that he was two people in one, Knight Flaga and the dark sorcerer Shasura. He then summoned both forms and merged them. Everyone was astonished that he had reincarnated his past lives and had come to help destroy the flying insects. Moroha realized he was no longer alone, gained confidence, and began writing the spell that would destroy the dragon once and for all. At the same time, everyone else began writing their own spells to attack simultaneously, just as the dragon was about to cancel them. Angela threw her dagger into the dragon's eye to block its ability until Moroha finished his spell. Then, the dragon released a sonic attack, roaring once again, but Edward used his body and armor to block the echo of the screams. Moroha then soared to the highest point, faced the dragon directly, and joined forces with Satsuki and Shizuno. Together, they delivered the final blow that erased the dragon for good. The strike caused a massive explosion, and everyone celebrated the victory. At that moment, Japan's #1's rank, who only knows how to sleep, regained consciousness and realized that Moroha had managed to defeat the dragon. A few days after the battle, Edward said farewell to Moroha and his companions before returning to England with Angela. Before departing, he approached Moroha and warned him about the head of the French branch, who was also probably a woman. After watching Edward's plane take off, they left the airport, and Shizuno went to look for the driver. Moroha asked if Satsuki still didn't remember anything about the encounter with the dragon and its defeat. She said it only felt like a recurring dream from one of her past lives. Unfortunately, their academy had been destroyed, and Satsuki was sad about losing so many memories from that place. But Moroha told her that they could make new memories anywhere. Shizuno mentioned that Moroha would be staying at her house for a while. Satsuki was upset, so Shizuno suggested she stay at her former cat's house. But Satsuki kept complaining. On the way home, Moroha explained that he had met the Witch of the Underworld when he was on the verge of losing control over his powers. Shizuno cut him off before he could finish and asked him to keep it a secret. Just as they were about to kiss, Satsuki ran over and interrupted the moment, kissing Moroha on both cheeks, making him stumble and lose his balance. And that's how the worst anime I've ever watched in my life ends, and here on this channel, there are plenty more terrible shows like this one, a never-ending spiral of depression.